Hello, today I am coming at you with the Pixar book tag, and I was tagged to do this by the lovely Tash from Tash Talks Tons. I have such a soft spot for Pixar films. They're such a quintessential part of my childhood, especially because I didn't get to watch a lot of the stuff that I feel like a lot of people my age did. This is mainly because my parents were very particular about what they thought was quality television and movies that me and my sister should be watching. So my childhood mainly consisted of Jane Austen adaptations and old BBC sitcoms. However, animated films, particularly Pixar and DreamWorks, not so much Disney, were an exception because my dad used to be a computer animator, so he was always really interested in watching the latest animated films, so my sister and I often got to go to the cinema with him to watch these films. I especially remember watching films like Monsters Inc., The Incredibles, Shrek, Chicken Run. I remember we had Toy Story 2 on VHS and we used to watch that constantly. So in honor of the childhood nostalgia, I decided that all my answers to the questions in this tag would be children's books. First question is Cars. Name a book in which a character goes on a long physical journey. For this, I picked Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. I was obsessed with all the books from that series when I was a child. I really loved historical fiction, and the fact that these were based off Laura's real childhood made them even more exciting for me. I used to pretend that I was living on the prairie all the time. I would wear gingham dresses and force my sister to play along with me even though she hated those kinds of books. And interestingly, I learnt recently that it's possible that Laura's daughter Rose actually wrote the books and that Laura just provided sort of the outlines and the details because Rose was a renowned writer of her time. So in answer to the question, the books are all about Laura and her family traveling around America. They're constantly having to leave the little wood cabin houses that they build everywhere for one reason or another, and I think the famous image from their book is of the family in their covered wagon traveling across the prairies of America. Question 2, Inside Out, name a book about the mind. For this, I picked People Might Hear You by Robin Klein. Robin Klein, as you all know, is my favourite children's author, and this book in particular is quite different from a lot of her famous books. It's a bit more young adult perhaps than children's. So it's about a 12-year-old girl called Frances. One day her aunt tells Frances that they are going to move in with her new husband and his 3 daughters. Frances doesn't know until they move in that her new uncle is one of the leaders in a sort of fanatical religious cult, and she is basically trapped there in the cult and in the religion because her aunt is now fully in the religion as well. This is such a creepy book and it's all very psychological. Frances herself is physically trapped, but the book also examines the way that the other 3 daughters and also the aunt as well are mentally trapped in this religion and in this cult by the man in the household. I definitely remember being super creeped out by this book, but in the best way. It was the kind of book where I had to read it all in one go. Question 3, Monsters Inc. Who or what is your most lovable book creature? So I picked the titular It from The 5 Children and It by E. Nesbit. The thing referenced as it in the title is in fact a sand fairy or a Samiad. These 4 brothers and sisters in the Edwardian era are staying in this country house over the summer for some reason, and when they go exploring in the nearby quarries, they find the Samiad buried under the sand, and he is able to grant them wishes, which of course inevitably turn out horribly wrong. I love all the books in this series, which also include The Phoenix and the Carpet, and I think my sort of visual memory of both those creatures is partly from the TV series that my sister and I watched. Both the Sand Fairy and the Phoenix were puppets, and so they had a beautiful physical quality to them that you can't get from CGI. And yeah, who doesn't want a strange grumpy goblin turning up in their back garden and giving them wishes? Number 4, Brave. Who is the best book mum? So I do own all the books that I've mentioned, but they are of course all at my parents' house. But for this question I do have the book, and it's the mum from Swallows and Amazons. I'm not sure if she gets a first name, I think she's just called Mrs. Walker. But who doesn't love a mum who lets their children sail off in a boat and camp on an island by themselves for days on end? I just thought that was the best thing possible when I was a child. I wanted so much to be a part of their family. I love the entire Swallows and Amazon series, and there are so many of them. And I especially related, of course, to the character of Titty, who is a child who loves reading and writing stories. Number 5 is similar to number 4, Finding Nemo. Who is the best book dad? So for this, I picked Mo from Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. Inkheart is the first in a trilogy, and it's a very meta story about books. and books coming to life and characters in books living their own lives outside of the printed page. And as far as I remember, I haven't read them for a very long time, but Mo has the ability, when reading aloud, to bring to life characters from books. I loved his character, and I loved the character of his daughter Maggie, who was the main character of these stories, so much when I was a kid. Question 6, Toy Story, a book from your childhood do you think every kid should read? So I was thinking about this and I couldn't think of one individual book, but when looking through my Goodreads, I remembered the My Story series. And this is a series of books. I think there were different versions of them in different countries. I'm pretty sure there were some British My Story books, possibly America's where it started, and then we had Australian versions. And these books were in the form of diaries from the points of view of children from different historical times. So the Australian ones included things like a child from the Gold Rush, a child from the first fleet landing in Sydney. There was one about an Aboriginal child who was part of the stolen generation, which I found incredibly powerful, even as a child not really quite understanding what I was reading. And I feel like these books gave me the best education in Australian history that I could not have got anywhere else. They're incredibly engaging. I always thought the characters were really well drawn, and the way they included the historical aspects was really clever. You never felt like you were being taught or preached anything, and they were incredibly immersive in whatever time that they were set in. I wish these books were more well known, and hopefully children now are still reading these books, because I think they are invaluable in teaching kids about Australian history, or even teaching kids about British and American history, but most importantly for Australian kids, Australian history, which is not well taught in this country, and a lot of things do get skipped over. The stolen generation one especially is something that has impacted me much more than I realized it would when I first read it, because when I read it when I was probably maybe 11 years old, something like that, I had no idea that this was not exactly common knowledge in Australia. There are a lot of people who don't know that the stolen generation happened, some people who like to say it didn't happen, and so when I heard those debates come up when I was a bit older, I was sort of confused, because I knew that I'd read this book about it and just found it really bizarre that something that I'd read as a kid was not widely known about at all. Question 7, The Incredibles. If you could have any superpower or ability, what would it be and why? So I've always wished that I was able to project my thoughts and feelings onto other people, and now this would get quite complicated in practice. I was thinking about it recently in regards to online arguments, and especially Twitter arguments, and how a lot of the world's problems at the moment seem to be through a lack of ability to communicate different perspectives with each other. I know for me personally, it's always been a bit of a struggle to communicate why I'm vegan, for example, to other people, because it is not a very common thing even now. And the ideas around veganism go very much against the normalized way society views animal agriculture. I've always thought that if I could project the way that I feel and think onto other people just instantly, rather than trying to explain it using words, then people would understand a lot more where I was coming from and why I was choosing to be vegan. In practice, it would be a bit hard to try and regulate your thoughts well enough so you didn't accidentally insult anyone via your thoughts. I'm not sure how it would work in practice. Question 8, Ratatouille, name a fictional food you would want to eat. This is the one question where I knew instantly what my answer would be, and it is a melly drop from the book Bartlett and the Ice Voyage by Odo Hirsch. Odo Hirsch is an Australian children's author that was pretty popular when I was a child. I'm not sure whether anyone really reads his books anymore, but the Bartlett series was about this explorer called Bartlett in these made-up magical fictional worlds, and this is the first in the series, and it was about this queen who had heard of this amazing fruit in a faraway land called the melly drop, which was described as being the most delicious fruit in the world, kind of like a mango but with other tropical fruits involved. And as a child I thought it sounded incredible. In the story, the world in which it's set doesn't have refrigeration or electricity, so Bartlett has to come up with this scheme to try and get the melly drop to the queen, and he works out that the only way to keep the melly drop fresh, because melly drops do go rotten very fast, is to encase it in an iceberg and drag the iceberg via a ship back to the Queen's country. Last question, number 9, Coco, a book with an international setting. So Tash brought this up in her video, but it's a bit confusing by what an international setting means. So I decided I'd pick a book set in a country that wasn't the UK or America or Australia. So I picked The Roman Mysteries by Caroline Lawrence. I'm actually currently rereading these books, and I'm up to this one now, which is number 5. These are set in ancient Rome. The characters travel all around the Roman Empire, including different places in Italy, as well as Egypt and Greece, and they're really great pieces of historical fiction. Caroline Lawrence is a historian, so she really knows her stuff. You really feel totally immersed in the world of ancient Rome, and she does not hold back. I haven't read these since I was a child, and it is a little bit shocking, some of the details. They're very violent in places. They're very realistic to the times. Flavia, the main character, is an 11-year-old girl. By the end of the series, when she's sort of like 12, maybe encroaching 13, she's starting to think about marriage because that was normal for girls back in the ancient Roman times. So that is the end of the tag. I will tag a few people in the description. Let me know in the comments your favorite children's book and your favorite Pixar film. I think my favorite Pixar film is still Toy Story 2, almost purely for nostalgia reasons, but there are so many that I love as well. Monsters Inc. is amazing, WALL-E is amazing, A Bug's Life is amazing as well. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you soon. Bye!